Alrighty. As I mentioned, my name is Maria Elena, and I'm super, super excited to go over the Stockton Financing Your Education process with you tonight. Okay. So when I do these presentations, what I like to do is kind of form everything as a Q&A. So I like to go over the entire process because we do have a good mix in our audience tonight of students who may be coming in for the spring. They may be coming in for next fall. We have students who may be even coming in after that. So I like to go over the entire process. So some of this information you may be old news to you. You may have already gone through that part of the process. Whereas some of you, we're going to be learning new things. So the first half of this presentation, I kind of go over what type of aid is available and where that financial aid comes from, and then how to apply for financial aid. And then the second part of this presentation is going to go over costs and how to cover those costs. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is what aid is available and where that aid actually comes from. Okay, so the sources of financial aid, that's where the aid comes from, includes the federal and state governments, the university, and private entities. So private entities would be an organization that would lend you a loan or that would offer you a scholarship. Okay, and these sources provide two different types of aid. The first is gift aid, which is everybody's favorite, free money. That comes in the form of grants and scholarships. So free money obviously does not have to be paid back. And then the next type of aid is self-help aid. Self-help aid comes in the form of loan options, so borrowed money that must be repaid with interest, and then employment opportunities, so working and earning a paycheck. That's also an option as well. Now, I just want to dive a little bit deeper into the types of aid that each source offers. So, the federal government is pretty well rounded. They offer grant opportunities in the form of the federal Pell Grant. They offer the federal work study program, which is that self-help opportunity working and earning a paycheck. And then they also offer federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans to students. So, pretty well rounded. They kind of offer it all. The state tends to focus more on grant funding. So the state's largest program is the tuition aid grant. We refer to that as TAG. There are a lot of acronyms in financial aid. So we refer to that as TAG. They also manage the Garden State Guarantee Program, which I'll dive a little bit deeper into in a minute. The Educational Opportunity Fund grant, also referred to as EOF, and NJ STARS and NJ STARS 2. Next, aid from the university. So we offer at Stockton grant opportunities. We have the Stockton Promise that I'll talk about, and then scholarship opportunities as well. So our scholarship opportunities are based on both merit and extracurricular achievement. And then private aid would be, as I mentioned earlier, private scholarships, private loans, anything that's not from one of these other sources. Excuse me. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Stockton scholarships. At Stockton, we reward students' academic success, okay? First-time applicants, I know, like I said, we have a good range of students or students and families in this presentation tonight. Some of you may be first-time applicants, others may be transfer applicants. So for our first-time applicants, we are looking at things like your high school transcript. We're going to look at your essay, letters of recommendation, and then we're
They
also
can't
going
see
to
us,
look
can they?
at extracurricular
At first they could, because I was
extracurricular achievement. Okay. So extracurricular achievement is going to be things like work opportunities, work that you've participated in, part-time jobs, summer jobs, things like that. Volunteerism or community engagement, family responsibilities you may have, school, community, clubs, organizations, things like that that you've been a part of, or just other meaningful experiences to you, things that make you who you are as the student. So we want to know about those things. And we do use that to determine scholarship eligibility along with the transcripts and letters of rec and all those other things. For our transfer applicants who have 16 or more earned transferable non-basic skills credits from a regionally accredited undergrad institution, we're going to look at your GPA. The minimum for our scholarships to be considered for scholarships is a 3.4. And the things that we'll look at are the transcripts from all of the schools that you've attended. There is also more information available on our scholarships. For the transfer one specifically, we do list out what GPA would equate to what scholarship. So all of that information is available on our website if you go to stockton.edu/scholarships. Excuse me. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the Stockton Promise, okay? This is the grant opportunity that I mentioned through the university. So the Stockton Promise is a really great program because it covers 100% of the gap between federal, state, and institutional financial aid programs, grants, and scholarships, and the cost of tuition and fees for qualifying students. So what it basically does, it will take the cost of tuition and fees, will subtract any other grants and scholarships that the student is eligible for, and whatever the difference is there, the Stockton Promise would actually cover so that the student would have a $0 net price for tuition and fees. The Stockton Promise is available to New Jersey residents with 0 to 59 earn credits. So typically your first and second year students, your freshmen and sophomores whose family adjusted gross income is between 0 and 65,000. Students don't have to complete a separate application to apply for the Stockton Promise. They will either file the FAFSA or New Jersey Dreamer students will file the New Jersey Alternative application. And that's the application, that's what we use to determine eligibility for that program. And students would automatically be offered that funding if they're eligible. And there is more information, eligibility criteria, all that good stuff on our website at stockton.edu/promise. Next, I just want to touch on the Garden State Guarantee, which is a very similar program to the Stockton Promise. It is a last dollar program, just like the Stockton Promises, that covers the gap between federal, state, institutional, and the difference is private grants and scholarships um, as well. So what this program will do is it'll take the cost of tuition and fees, subtract any other federal, state, institutional, or private grants and scholarships that the student may receive, and then cover that gap so that the student would pay a $0 net price for tuition and fees. I do want to emphasize tuition and fees because the Stockton Promise and the Garden State Guarantee do not cover housing and meal costs. Those would be separate with other loan funding or out of pocket or whatever the case is, which I'll talk more about covering costs after. But just note that these programs are for tuition and fees only. This grant is available to New Jersey residents with 60 to 128 earn credits. So that's typically our third and fourth year students or juniors and seniors, whose family adjusted gross income meets the criteria outlined by the state of New Jersey. So it is the same right now. It is the 0 to 65,000. Same thing, students will file the FAFSA or New Jersey Dreamers will file the New Jersey Alternative application each year to determine eligibility. So there's not a separate application. You will just complete the FAFSA, which is your application for all financial aid, and then we will offer whatever age you're eligible for based on that FAFSA. Of course, like I said, with the Stockton Promise, there is additional eligibility criteria and information on the Garden State Guarantee at stockton.edu/GSG. Next, I want to highlight the Educational Opportunity Fund program because this is a really great program that really helps students who come from backgrounds of economic and educational disadvantage to really succeed in school. So EOF in itself is not a financial aid program. There is a financial aid component to it, but there are a lot of great benefits to EOF that are not just financial. So EOF students are eligible to receive free credits. When they attend the Interactive Summer Academy, they get, specialized counseling, access to those student success coaches and counselors, housing assistance. There are networking opportunities available. EOF is really, Stockton in general is really a big family. EOF is a family in that. It's a really great program that if you do qualify for, if the student qualifies for, I highly recommend being a part of. Students, same thing, apply by filing a FAFSA or the New Jersey Alternative application. That's for NJ Dreamers. Unlike the other programs I talked about, there is a separate application process for EOF students. So what you'll do is on your admissions application, you'll indicate that you're interested in the EOF program. And then we will contact you from there with the additional documentation we need because we do need to verify income and all of that kind of stuff. Um, so if you have any questions on EOF, please feel free to check out our website. And you can also go to Michelle in admissions, Michelle Puerta. She's a great resource as well. She'll be able to kind of walk through the process with you and all of that. Here is the eligibility criteria. If you think that you may be eligible, please feel free to reach out, indicate that you're interested on your admissions application, and we will absolutely guide you through the process. With this criteria, You'll check to see how many people are in the household, and then within that line, you'll see what your adjusted gross income can, be at max, and then your max asset cap as well. Excuse me. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about. So we talked a lot about what aid programs are available. I didn't talk about all of them, of course, because there are a ton. But I talked about some of the big ones and some of the more complex ones that I wanted you guys to be aware of. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to actually apply for financial aid. How do we apply for those aid programs? All U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens will file the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. You're going to file the FAFSA each year to determine your eligibility for all federal, state, and some institutional aid programs as well. The FAFSA has typically been available each October 1st. It is now required by law to be available by October 1st. It was a little earlier this year, which was a treat. In years prior, it's been a little bit later because they did do some updates to the FAFSA, but they seem to be working through a lot of the kinks that were there. So it was available a little early this year. New Jersey Dreamer students are not eligible for federal student aid, but could be considered for state aid as well as institutional aid. New Jersey Dreamers are going to complete the New Jersey Alternative application at HISA.org each year to determine state and institutional aid eligibility. New Jersey Dreamers are undocumented students who meet certain eligibility criteria defined by the state of New Jersey. So if you think you may be a New Jersey Dreamer, you can go to HISA.org to look at additional eligibility criteria, make sure that you're eligible, and then apply for state and institutional aid as well. I also want everybody to know that the state aid, so HISA, that's where New Jersey Dreamer students are applying for their state aid and institutional aid. But HISA also determines state aid eligibility for NJ residents who are U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens. So they actually get a copy of the FAFSA and they determine state aid eligibility as well. So you're not getting away from HISA if you are a New Jersey, or excuse me, if you're a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. Okay. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the steps to apply for financial aid because this is a big thing in itself. The first step is going to be creating a studentaid.gov account. That's formerly called an FSA ID. Any parent who has an FSA ID already, you can use that same FSA ID for all of the students in your household. So if you have, a child that went to school several years ago, you're going to use that same FSA ID for yourself, but all students are required to create their own FSA ID. So your children will have to create their own to be able to log in and do the FAFSA. All right. One thing to note is before parents without social security numbers could not create a studentaid.gov account. Now they can. They do just have to complete the identity verification process in order to complete the FAFSA. The next step is completing the FAFSA. So once you have your accounts to be able to log in, you're going to actually complete the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, like I mentioned earlier, and it's your application for all federal and state aid, as well as some institutional aid, okay? The FAFSA uses demographic and financial information, including family size and income and assets from the student and family to determine a student's aid eligibility. In a lot of cases where students are dependent, they're going to report parent information as well. I do want to note that it's only the parent's information that would be required on the FAFSA unless the student was adopted. Okay, if the student was adopted, then it would be the adoptive parents, but it's never the case where student lives with a sibling and they don't have contact with their parents. The sibling does not go on the FAFSA. Grandparents don't go on the FAFSA. It would only be the biological parents or the adoptive parents. Okay, there are other avenues that we go if the student is not in contact with their parents, they don't know where they are, different things like that, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. October 1st. So anybody attending this spring or looking to attend spring of 2026, you are going to complete the 2025-2026 FAFSA, and you can do that now. It gets a little confusing sometimes because there are multiple FAFSAs out at a time. Excuse me. So you want to look at the years that the FAFSA outlines. So 25-26, that's for fall of 2025, spring of 2026. So that's why anybody who's looking to attend in spring of 2026 is going to do the 25-26 FAFSA. Anybody attending in fall of 2026 or spring of 2027 will complete the 26-27 FAFSA. That is also available now. Anybody looking to attend after that, your FAFSA will be available October 1st of the year prior to you attending.
I have a question. So my
Um, I can't hear exactly who's talking, but
transferring
you're a little
this
muffled. But
semester.
if you don't mind, I would like to
Um,
hold all questions till the end,
how,
if that's okay. Okay. So a few things to know before applying. One thing that's sort of new within the past couple years is that students can create and parents can create their studentaid.gov accounts and complete the FAFSA in the same day. Before they had to go through this matching process, which they still do, but it doesn't take as long. Um, so within a few, it used to take a few business days. So now students can just, and parents can just complete their FSA ID, create their studentaid.gov account, and do the FAFSA in the same exact day. One tip that I do have for students and families is I highly recommend, and actually the Department of Education has come out to say this as well. We highly recommend that students start the application and invite their parent contributors. Okay, so students and parents are going to complete their sections of the FAFSA separately. Um, the parent can technically start the application first, but there can be some issues with that going forward if the student has to make any corrections or anything to their FAFSA. Excuse me. So we really highly recommend that the student starts the application as the student, completes their section, and then invites the parent to contribute. Okay. It just avoids some issues, in the future, just some technical glitches and things that we've seen occur. Once the student adds their parent as a contributor to their FAFSA, which they only have to enter their email to do that, the contributor will receive an email with a code asking them to log into the FAFSA using their own studentaid.gov account. All contributors have to complete their section of the application for a student's FAFSA to be submitted to federal student aid for processing. So once parents get that email, they'll complete their section of the FAFSA and then submit their piece, and then the whole FAFSA will be submitted to federal student aid. The direct data exchange is something that's new within the past few years, but has been really great. It takes a lot of manual work out of applying for financial aid, out of doing the FAFSA. So what it does is it imports tax information into the FAFSA directly from the IRS after the student or the parent consents to the data exchange. All students and parents have to consent to this process, or the student will not be eligible for federal student aid in that whatever that aid year is. So you want to make sure that you are consenting to that, even if you didn't earn wages in the year the FAFSA is asking, even if you didn't file taxes in that year, everybody has to consent to this process. Um, Consenting is very easy though. It's just clicking a button that says I agree. And then it transfers all of your tax information, all of your income information directly into the FAFSA. So you don't have to look at your tax return for the most part. Some parents and families will. But for the most part, you won't have to look at your tax return and input data that way. Excuse me. Something else to note, child support received is reported as an asset on the FAFSA. You're going to report the amount received in the last complete calendar year. Education savings plans like 529s for the applicant only are reported as parental assets. So if you're a parent who has a 529 plan for your 3 children, you're only going to report the 529 plan for the child who's applying for financial aid on the FAFSA, and that would be presented as your asset. Excuse me. The net worth or value of businesses and farms must be reported. Okay. This is any business and farm for the 25-26 academic year. Okay. So on the 25-26 FAFSA, we are reporting the net worth or value of businesses and farms with any number of employees. New for the 26-27 FAFSA, excuse me, is that We're going back to the old way a few years ago, where the net worth of businesses and farms with over 100 employees was reported. Okay. So 25, 26, all businesses and farms, the net worth needs to be reported. 26, 27, the net worth or value of businesses and farms with over 100 employees needs to be reported. So you have 99 employees, 26, 27, you do not have to report the value of that business or farm. Okay. After completing the FAFSA, each student will receive their Student Aid Index or SAI. This is an indexing number used to determine aid eligibility. It's not the bill. It's not how much the student or the parents have to contribute towards the student's education. It's solely an indexing number that schools are really using to determine aid eligibility. So please do not think too much into the SAI. Um, Honestly, you don't have to ignore it. A general rule is that the larger your SAI, the less eligible for aid you may be. It goes all the way down to negative 1,500. So the lower you are, the better your chances for additional need-based financial aid, so grants and things like that. But you really don't need to pay too much attention to the SAI. Just some helpful information, hopefully. If you are doing the 25-26 FAFSA, if you're incoming for spring, 2023 income information is reported. Something I do want to note, because I do see this not super often, but sometimes, is that marital status, that's the best example. I actually saw this today. Marital status is as of the day the FAFSA is filed. I know that we look at 2023 income information for this FAFSA, but marital status is not what your marital status was in 2023. It's what it is now. And then we'll determine how to proceed from there. If you're doing the 26-27 FAFSA, it's going to be 2024 income information. Again, something like marital status is as of the day the FAFSA was filed. Okay. Which parents are reported? So this is a question that we get quite often too, because all situations are different. If parents are married or unmarried and living together, then both biological and adoptive parents are reported on the FAFSA. Okay. If parents are divorced or separated, then it's the custodial parent who is reported on the FAFSA. In the case, well, first of all, a custodial parent is the parent who provides more than 50% of the student's financial support. In the case where both parents provide equal support, the parent with greater income or assets is actually the one reported. Okay. If parents are divorced and the custodial parent is remarried, both the custodial parent and the step parent's information is reported on the FAFSA, even if the custodial parent and their new spouse were not married in the tax year the FAFSA uses. And that's why I said that not the direct data exchange may not always work for everybody. And the reason I say that is because in the case where parents were married in 2023, but now they're divorced, the custodial parent's the one that's going to go on the FAFSA, so the marital status is going to be divorced if they are divorced. The direct data exchange may see that you filed a joint return in 2023. In that case, it's not going to work, and you're going to have to manually input information. We verify this information anyway, but really what you want to do is only enter the custodial parent's part of that tax return, not the entire amount. If it was both parents earning stuff within that year, earning wages, or income. But we do verify that stuff anyway. So we'll actually go in and make sure, we'll collect your tax returns and make sure that all of that is correct. But that's why I say that might not always work for you. And the marital status is the marital status as of the day the FAFSA is filed. Even if the custodial parent and their new spouse were not married in the tax year that it's asking for, it'll ask for that step parent, if you will. It'll ask for their information separately. Unusual circumstances. So there are cases where students have an unusual circumstance where they cannot contact their parents. So either there was a situation where the student was removed for the home because it was unsafe or unstable. The student has no idea where their parents are, and can document that, things like that. That would be an unusual circumstance. So the student is not going to answer yes to any of the dependency questions. They'll still answer no to all of those, but they'll select the option that they have an unusual circumstance. And the school will then determine through documentation, so things like police reports, court orders, um, uh, written statements from third parties who are disinterested. So high school guidance counselors, things like that. People can attest to the student's situation, and then we'll use that to determine if the student can be considered independent or if they do have to provide parent information on the FAFSA. Students who select this option, they have what's called a provisional SAI, which, like I said earlier, the SAI is that indexing number. So it tells them what it will be if they are considered independent. If they are considered dependent, then they'll have to go back and add parent information and then look at a new SAI. But nothing is processed until the school does their piece of this. Hmm. Okay, that was a lot. The FAFSA is a lot. Not as much as it used to be, though. So I dove into a lot of information because everybody's situation is different. And I like to touch on common pieces. Um, but the FAFSA is a lot easier than it used to be. I'll definitely say that. Typically, for most families, it takes less than 20 minutes to do. Unless you have, special circumstances and things like that, it might take a little bit longer. The next step after you complete the FAFSA is determining state aid eligibility. Like I mentioned earlier, the state of New Jersey's Higher Education Student Assistance Authority, also known as HESA, they get a copy of every student who is attending a New Jersey school's FAFSA. Okay, so all New Jersey residents who attend a New Jersey college or university are considered for state financial aid programs. And students can view their eligibility on the state's website at njfams.hesa.org. This is where all state aid eligibility is hosted. We do also show state aid eligibility on our end. The state may ask for additional documents and things like that. Um, so that can all be viewed on their website. So we do recommend that students, after filing the FAFSA, create an account at njfams.hesa.org. They'll enter their name, date of birth, social, it all linked to their FAFSA, and then they'll be able to view state information on there as well. Most federal information is housed on our Stockton platforms, so we will alert students to federal requirements and things like that. We also do alert students to state requirements as well, but it's good to get on HESA's site and make sure that you're viewing everything. And the next piece, completing any outstanding requirements. One common misconception or just thing that I see is that students think that once they get their aid offer, they're done. They're done with financial aid, and that is most often not the case. Many students have financial aid requirements to complete after they receive their aid offer. Like I said, how we review FAFSAs of students whose parent is divorced but was married in that tax year, just to make sure that everything was input correctly. Because a lot of times people will put the whole amount, and we could make them more eligible for aid if we're doing it the right way and putting only half of the amount or whatever the amount that that parent earned and all of that in that year. So, my point in all of this is that students need to be checking their emails. I know that that is a big deal. Um, but I want to stress that anything that comes from financial aid is very important. Not that other things are not, but your financial aid is how you're paying to go to school. You don't have financial aid or you don't have a way to pay, then you're not able to go to school. We don't want to see that happen, of course. So we want to make sure that students are on top of all of this, at least sending this stuff to parents so that they can help them. We want to make sure that students are not ignoring communications from financial aid. Okay. What students will end up doing is if they have requirements, emails will direct them to log into their Go Stockton portal and view their financial aid requirements within the portal, and that will give them instructions on how to complete those requirements. HESA will also send students emails, and we send students emails on behalf of HESA to log into their system. This is the NJFAM system that I mentioned, and complete their requirements. Again, we don't want to see anybody miss out on any type of aid. So please, please encourage your students, if anybody's listening to this presentation, please make sure that you are completing all financial aid requirements, that you are constantly checking your emails for information from financial aid. Okay, I know that was a lot. Applying for financial aid is a big deal. I feel like the application process is a little smoother than maybe it may have seemed just because that was a lot of information. But again, everybody's situation is different, so I like to put a lot of that information out there because at least for a few of you, something may have clicked and I may have answered hopefully a question for you. Okay. The next parts of this presentation are going to go over costs. So what are your costs? How do you determine what your costs are going to be? And then how do we cover those costs? That's obviously also very, very important. Now that you've applied, we are going to go over the cost of attendance. As I mentioned before, the FAFSA changed a lot over the last few years. I wish that they would have changed the term cost of attendance because it is a little confusing for some students and families. So the cost of attendance is not necessarily what you are going to owe the university to attend. It is more than just your tuition and fees and housing and meals if you live on campus, okay? The cost of attendance includes two different components, and those are direct costs and indirect costs. Your direct costs include direct expenses to the university. So these are things like tuition and fees, housing and a meal plan. You can think of direct costs as your bill. Excuse me. It also includes indirect costs. These are things like books and supplies, transportation, other miscellaneous personal expenses. These are costs that you may incur as a result of attending school, and that's why we include them in the cost of attendance, okay? Because we want you to get an idea of the overall picture of what it may cost to attend, not just what you may owe the university, right? Because you are going to run into some of these expenses, especially books and things like that. So when you are looking at your financial aid offer, you're looking at the cost of attendance. It's important to kind of differentiate between these two. We lay it out in the way the federal government asks us to. Um, but really, if you want to get an idea of what it may cost you to attend the university, what you may owe the university, you're going to want to look at those direct costs. Then you'll subtract any financial aid that you're offered, any free money first, and then any of those self-help opportunities. And then you'll get an idea of what your gap may be, and I'll go over the gap in a minute. Just another way I like to illustrate the cost of attendance. So you have your direct costs, tuition and fees, housing and meals. We're going to add those indirect expenses in. There's your financial aid because for majority of students, financial aid will not cover your entire cost. Okay, so there is going to be what's called the gap. All right, and that's the difference between your costs and your aid. So how are we going to cover those costs? How are we going to fill that gap? So there are several different ways to do that. The first is reducing your costs. The second is scholarships. The third, saving, making payments. And the fourth, and my favorite one to talk about, is borrowing. Okay. So we're going to start out talking reducing your costs. Okay. One of the best ways to reduce your gap is to reduce costs. So consider the following options: maximizing your credits. Consider taking additional credits each semester to graduate early. Stockton has what's called a flat rate tuition. So you can take between 12 and 20 credits for the same exact price. So we have a lot of students who will typically, if you want to graduate within 4 years, you're going to take 4 classes a semester. Our classes are 4 credits each. So that will typically get you, it's 16 credits a semester, and that will typically get you to the 128 credits that you need within 4 years. If you take additional credits, or if you take summer classes and things like that, you could end up graduating a semester early, a year early. When I graduated, my two of my roommates graduated, actually three of them now I think about it, graduated a year early, which is obviously an accomplishment, but thinking about that, they graduated a year early. They saved a whole year's worth of expenses, a whole year's worth of tuition and fees, all that stuff. So something to think about, even if it's not a year, even if it's a semester, or you're just able to lighten your load in certain semesters and take a little bit more in others. Whatever works best for you. Okay. And then choosing a cheaper option. So thinking about housing, meal plans, are there cheaper options? I know you might, we all want the luxury and all that stuff, but are there cheaper options that will get us to where we want to be? Great experiences, but we are paying for them, right? And then look into renting textbooks, okay? A lot of students rent textbooks. Speaking from when I was in school, I purchased all the books within my major because I thought that I was going to need all of them. And they all are still collecting dust in my basement, which I really need to get rid of them. But I could have probably saved a few dollars if I rented those ones as well. So just something to think about there too. Scholarships is another one of my favorite topics, private scholarships specifically, because they are everywhere. And so many students do not take advantage of private scholarships and private scholarship opportunities. So some of the places we can find these scholarships, local organizations, example being your local Rotary Club. The student picture on the left here applied for a scholarship with his local Rotary Club, and he was given a laptop. So that cut down on that indirect expense of that laptop, so he didn't have to put that out of pocket. Scholarship search sites. So FastWeb is one. You can go on search sites and search for, there's a left-handed scholarship out there. You can search for a scholarship for people who really love football, different things like that, okay? Different sports you've played, different activities you participated in, your heritage, all those different types of things. There are scholarships out there for everyone and everything. Your high school, okay? High school guidance counselors are a great resource for scholarships, okay? Because a lot of those local organizations will come to the high school and say that they want to offer a scholarship to a student at X high school. A lot of times, many students don't apply for them, so the applicant pool is a lot smaller. So those are really, really good ones to apply for because the competition's a lot less. So I would definitely recommend start asking high school guidance counselors for scholarship opportunities. I think a lot of them do tend to come after the holidays, but start asking now. Be that annoying person to keep emailing. Could benefit you in the long run. And then the student or their parents' employers. The student on the right here worked for Chick-fil-A, and she received a $25,000 scholarship. Um, Not everybody is as generous as Chick-fil-A, but that's just an example of there are places, employers that may offer scholarships that you would have never thought of. I know that Chipotle does like a tuition reimbursement. I believe Target does that too. So wherever you're working, students, ask your employers, ask their HR, see if there's any opportunity for you to apply. And then I've also seen a lot of students come in with scholarships from their parents' employers as well. So parents, you may want to check with, whoever the HR is at your place of employment and see if they offer any type of scholarship or tuition benefit or anything like that. One thing I do like to say is there are a lot of scholarships out there, and we're applying for free money, but nothing is really free. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to apply for these scholarships. So I understand that it's a lot and it takes a lot of time, but um, you know, earning that free money could really benefit you in the long run. So make sure that you're applying for these scholarships because this is really a great way to cut a lot of costs when going to college. One scholarship opportunity that I do want to mention once you are a Stockton student is that Stockton offers what's called foundation scholarships to our students. Once somebody has a Stockton GPA, so you have to attend for a semester, you're eligible to apply for foundation scholarships. The foundation scholarships, typically their application opens like late January, early February, and it's one application for hundreds of different scholarships. Donors will come to Stockton and say they want to give a scholarship to a student with this major or just a student in need or, whatever the case might be. And students apply through the foundation scholarship process. And scholarships range from a couple $100s to a couple thousand. But I highly, highly recommend that every Stockton student applies for our foundation scholarships because it's a great opportunity when you're already a Stockton student. Another way to cut costs, saving and making payments. So this is kind of an obvious one, but I like to mention it just because I do think that it's really important. Anything that you can save now, any contribution that you can make towards your education now is going to save you money later. So any little bit, even though you might think it might be, minuscule, will really save you money in the long run. Students working a part-time job, That could help cover some of your expenses. And then take advantage of payment plan options. At Stockton, we bill per semester and we offer payment plans of up to 5 payments. So, whatever your cost of attendance is, your direct costs, you're going to split that into two. And then you're going to get the cost of fall and the cost of spring. And then whatever that is, minus your free money, so your grants and scholarships, you can split that into five, and that would be your monthly payment, plus the $60 fee to sign up. But there's no interest or anything on our payment plans. Um, so if you are maybe able to make payments each month, even if it's not for the full amount, you could get a loan for the rest and then even it out. So maybe your payment is $250 a month or $500 a month or whatever it is. So that's a great option as well. If say you are working and you're saving money each month to be able to contribute, that'll end up saving you money in the long run. And the reason that I say that all of this is going to save you money in the long run is because of borrowing. Okay. Many students, or I would say majority of students, have to borrow or take out loans to cover the costs of their education. Okay. I know borrowing can seem a little bit scary. It shouldn't be something that's feared. It should just be something that students and families are informed and educated on so that they're making decisions that will, be most beneficial to them in the long run. Okay. Going to school is an investment. So by borrowing, a lot of times you are investing in your education and in your future. So kind of think of it that way, but we want to make those smart decisions on how we're getting our money. Um, so some of the options, federal direct loans, private or alternative education loans, and parent direct plus loans. So those federal direct loans are offered through filing the FAFSA. The interest on those loans is typically lower than most private loans is going to be. We have private or alternative education loans. Those are loans through private entities, so banks, credit unions, anybody like that. The interest rate on those is typically pretty high. There are certain lenders that obviously have lower rates than others, and credit scores and income and debt and all that kind of impacts that as well. Most of the time for those types of loans, students are going to need a creditworthy cosigner to be approved for those because private loans are typically in the student's name with that cosigner. And then there are Parent Direct Plus loans. These loans are in the parent's name. They are credit-based, but they're through the federal government. Starting next year, there will be a cap on how much the parent can borrow for the year. But that could also help, fund the student's education. So that's another loan option. Like I said, don't be afraid of borrowing. Just be informed and responsible, okay? A general rule, you want to understand interest, of course. The general rule is the lower interest rate and the quicker you pay off the loan, the better off you are because you're going to end up paying less, okay? You have to think of interest as a fee to borrow the loan, but it's not a set fee. It keeps accruing over time. Don't overborrow, of course, because again, that interest will accrue. The amount of interest you'll end up paying back is greater the higher the amount you borrow is. So you're borrowing 10,000, your interest is going to be a lot less over time than if you borrow 30,000. So think of it like that. And the cost of attendance kind of helps us monitor that because you can't borrow or have more financial aid than the cost of attendance. I like to give this example because I feel like it really helps students and families kind of understand borrowing. And I promise we're almost finished. We're almost at the time for questions. But I really like this example. I feel like it hits home for a lot of students and families. So in this example, and these are not actual costs, this is just a made up scenario. And I have nice even numbers in here. Your total costs for the year are $30,000, but you received $10,000 in free money. You're unable to make payments, so now you need to borrow the rest. So you need to borrow $20,000 in loans. $20,000 minus the federal direct loans you're offered through filing the FAFSA, which for first-year students, that's $5,500. So that it's usually never enough to cover the entire gap, but you'll see why it's important to borrow that before a private loan. So if we do that, we need to borrow $14,500 in a private loan. $5,500 at the 6.39% interest rate that it currently is will cost you $7,457.28 over 10 years. $14,500 at a 9.99% interest rate, which that's kind of the middle ground for interest rates. I've seen ones that are a lot higher. I've also seen ones that are lower. So I tried to pick a middle ground. Um, and I'm talking about education loans specifically. That'll cost you $45,770.67 over 30 years, which is one of the standard repayments for private loans. Okay, obviously, if you pay it off quicker, you're gonna pay less interest. For that, your total to repay, remember you borrowed $20,000. Your total to repay is $53,227.95. I have had some students and families, or family members, parents, say to me, I don't want to borrow more than one loan. I just want to borrow, one entire, like the entire amount that I owe in one loan. And some students' families have done that. When I show you this example, though, I think that I might change your mind. So if you borrow the $20,000 at the 9.99% interest rate, that's going to cost you $63,131.95 over 30 years. The difference is $9,904. So you borrowed $20,000 in each scenario. In scenario one, you are repaying $9,904 less than scenario two. You borrowed the same exact amount. Just remember that, okay? That just goes to show you the interest rate really does matter. Okay. That's why we usually recommend if you are borrowing, borrow those federal direct loans first. If you're eligible for a subsidized loan, that loan does not accrue interest while the student's in school. The unsubsidized loans do, but don't let that scare you. Um, Almost all private loans do the same thing, and at a higher interest rate. So that's what I mean by be informed. Don't be afraid of borrowing, okay? You're investing in your education, just make smart decisions in doing it. And if you have any questions at all, we can't recommend any lenders to you. We can go over the general ideas of what you want to look for and things like that. Um, Wrapping up, I do just want to tout our social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Stockton FinAid. We do put a lot of good information out there, not just Stockton information, just a lot of financial aid information in general. We tweet scholarship opportunities on X. Those are already vetted, so that we know that they're legitimate, and students can just go ahead and apply for those. But please, I do recommend, you know, you don't have to like all of our stuff and all of that, but if you give us a follow, I think you'll see some really good information on your feeds. And then I just want to put this out here. Just some helpful resources for the federal government, the state government, and our office as well. We pride ourselves on answering the phone, which I know sounds like a small task, but I have heard a lot of offices don't. So you're almost always guaranteed to get an answer during our business hours. And if not, somebody will definitely call you back. You can schedule a phone appointment with us where we call you. You can call the office, you can come in, you can email us. And we would be glad to help you with, whatever questions that you have. And finally, if you haven't done so already, feel free to apply. Our applications for the spring of 2026 and the fall of 2026 are available for first year and transfer applicants. And you can view that information at stockton.edu/apply. And you can also visit us if you haven't. If you haven't been to campus, I highly, highly recommend it. It is a beautiful place, especially right now with all the leaves changing and everything. You can walk around the lake. It's a little cold some of these days to do that. But if you pick a nice day, it's a really, really beautiful campus. You get to explore all of the different areas, the lake, where students reside for housing, classrooms. You just get to see all of student life. So you can book a tour. You can view virtual tours at stockton.edu/visit. We will also have Discover Stockton Day, which is our open house in the spring. And then for any student who's been accepted to the university, we'll have Experience Stockton Day, where you'll have another chance to come and visit campus. So I highly, highly recommend that you do that. And that about wraps up my part of this. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Excuse me. And I am going to start with the questions in the chat. And then if anybody after those questions are done wants to unmute themselves, you can feel free to do that. All right, so first question. For transfer students, do you accumulate the GPA of high school and college? We do not for transfer students. We are only looking at all college transcripts, no high school. Is the EOF program offered to adult learners and or transfer students? So adult learners possibly. So first year students are generally eligible for or considered for EOF. Students who are transferring in would have had to have had EOF at a different school. And then you could transfer, and then if we had the funding available, we could offer that. So it depends on your situation. So what I would recommend doing is speaking to Michelle in admissions, and she'll be able to go over like the specific criteria and all of that, and if you may qualify. A New Jersey Dreamer is somebody who's an undocumented student who meets certain criteria defined by the state of New Jersey. So anybody who meets that criteria would complete the New Jersey alternative application instead of the FAFSA. What if your GPA as a transfer student is not a 3.4? That was solely for scholarships. So you have to have at least a 3.4 to be considered for transfer scholarships, but that's not the cutoff to be considered for admission to Stockton. When will students hear back from merit-based aid? So when you are applying to Stockton, you will be automatically considered for merit-based scholarships. Okay. So when you get your acceptance letter, you'll also be informed of what merit scholarships you may be eligible for at that time. If you don't receive anything, you may not be eligible, but you can always reach out to our admissions office to confirm that, to see if maybe you missed something in the common application when you were applying, if you can add activities and things like that. Do you stack outside scholarships a student may receive with the aid they may receive? Um, I don't exactly know what you mean by stack, but what we would do is any outside scholarship that you receive would just be applied to your bill. And it would go to cover your charges. And then if your aid is more than enough to cover your bill, you would get a refund of that money. The only time where it's a little bit different is with for outside scholarships is with the Garden State Guarantee. If you have the Garden State Guarantee, that does count, I don't want to say it negatively, but against stuff like that. So your scholarship comes in after you're eligible for Garden State Guarantee. It might just reduce Garden State Guarantee instead of adding to that. How soon after you complete the FAFSA do you receive your financial aid notification via your Stockton email? That is a great question, and thank you for the reminder because I did want to mention this. For anybody that's a transfer student, once you complete the FAFSA, we usually get it in like 1 to 2 business days. It's usually pretty quick. Um, we will offer you aid within a week of receiving it. Okay. So you should be getting aid offers now. For anybody who is looking to come in fall of 2026, we haven't started. Our system still needs to finish upgrading, which is with like our outside vendor that a lot of different schools use. So it's not fully ready for 26, 27 yet. We expect to begin sending aid offers out in February. So before that, you will get an email saying that Stockton has received your FAFSA. And then starting in February and then going into March and all of that, once we've received your FAFSA, you will get a financial aid offer from us. That'll come in as an email to the student. So please, parents who are listening, family members who are listening, students, make sure that you're checking your email. It'll come from the Office of Financial Aid at Stockton University, and it'll have a link to view the aid offer. What if your family does not qualify for FAFSA money due to high income? Would you just be relying on grants and scholarships from the school? So what I would recommend with this is You may not qualify for grants from the federal or state governments or even the university potentially because our grants are also need-based. But you could be eligible for those federal loans. If borrowing is the route you're going to do, if you're just going to pay out of pocket, then you would obviously just do that and not borrow, if you have the money to do that. But if you are going to be borrowing, you want to utilize those loans first. Then you would rely on private scholarships, any scholarships that you're getting from the university, and then any private loans, payment plans, all that stuff. Can transfer students apply for the Stockton Foundation scholarships? Yes, you can. Unfortunately, the way that it works is the application for the 26-27 year is available end of January, early February of this year. So you wouldn't be eligible to apply for this year because you don't have a Stockton GPA, but you could apply for next year. So if you're going to be here longer than 3 semesters this spring and then next fall and spring, you can definitely apply. You can also apply if you're thinking of going to grad school at Stockton as well, because graduate students are also eligible for those foundation scholarships. Unfortunately, you just can't apply this round, but you could in the future. Somebody asked if the session will be recorded. Yes, it is being recorded, and I will make sure to send everybody the link to that within the next couple days. How do we get our SAI? Do they email us or do we have to log back in? No, once the FAFSA is fully submitted, the student gets an email letting them know what their SAI is. And then that's pretty much it. That's how you'll find it out. It'll also be on our Stockton Financial Aid offer as well. So you'll be able to see that there. Somebody's asking, when picking classes, will transfer students have a counselor sit with them about their AP classes taken and transfer classes accepted? She's coming Friday. Will scholarship, hold on one second, I'm sorry, this is a long one. Will scholarship money consider grades from this past semester at high school, and do letters of recommendation help? It depends. Let's see, transfer students. So, we would not consider anything from high school for a transfer student. Um, we would consider grades from this past semester, though. What we're going to want is final official transcripts from all students. So once the semester's over, then you would have the students send in their final official transcript from the community college. And we would look at that to assess for scholarship opportunities and what classes would count towards what. So at orientation, I don't know if they're going to be able to say for sure what classes are going to count for what. I would maybe try to make an appointment or maybe academic advising may be available to meet and kind of discuss that. But I don't know that it's going to be at orientation. For the payment plan, is it $60 per payment or $60 flat rate for the entire plan? It is $60 flat rate for the entire plan. You'll pay that each semester that you enroll in the plan, but it's just $60 for the whole plan. We're unable to sign into the Stockton portal. Who should I contact? So you're going to want to contact our information technology department. Let me see if I can put that in the chat really quick. Okay, so IT will be able to assist with that. So you'll contact them by that phone number. That's their help desk at 609-652-4203. And they'll be able to help you get in. For transfer students who stopped loans and then began them, does Stockton inform current student loan companies that they've begun school again? Yes. That usually happens after classes start, though. So classes begin January 20th, I believe. So at some point in February, once classes, everything's in the full swing of things, yeah, drop periods over, all of that, then we will inform through the National Clearinghouse all lenders. If students, need something before that, as long as it's after the ad drop, Student Records is able to fill out an in-school deferment form for them. We do that stuff automatically. Can you explain again the difference with subsidized and unsubsidized loans? Yes. So subsidized loans, they do not accrue interest while the student is in school. Okay. So they will accrue interest 6 months after the student graduates or drops below half-time enrollment, up through when they are repaid. But they do have that perk of not accruing interest while the student's in school. So if you're going between I'm going to borrow subsidized or I'm not going to borrow or I'm going to borrow both or whatever the case is, usually the subsidized is the better one. Um, but the unsubsidized loans are better than most private loans just because of that interest rate. If you can find a private loan with a better interest rate, then certainly go for that. But if not, then that's where you're going to go with. And the unsubsidized loans will accrue interest immediately once the funds are dispersed to the school, up through once they're repaid. Yes, I will definitely give out my contact information. So my name is Maria Elena. I'll write in here my email address. And you can contact me through email. Here's our office email as well. And then if you go to stockton.edu/contact, hold on, contact FinAid. We have FAFSA completion appointments available. We have phone appointments where we would contact you. You can, email us, all that good stuff. All of our information is on there. So please, feel free to do that. School, I'm so sorry. There's a lot of questions, so I want to make sure I don't miss any. Okay. My daughter was already accepted, but I have to do the FAFSA. When will she hear about aid? So once you do the FAFSA, most likely, I would say about 10 days after you submit the FAFSA, because that gives us time to get it, to process the aid offer and all of that. So have her continue to check her email once you do the FAFSA. Also, please take into account that next week there obviously is the Thanksgiving holiday, so we'll add a few more days onto that. So say you submit the FAFSA tomorrow. Um, I would say by the end of the first week of December, you would receive it. How long does it take to get an answer after applying for EOF? So that's a great question. I know admissions works pretty quickly on student applications and everything. I would actually reach out to Michelle in admissions. I'm gonna put her email in here. This is when you apply to Stockton and you indicate you're interested in EOF. She'll then reach out to you with next steps, but I would reach out to Michelle with any questions regarding EOF. Um, the financial aid piece to it is different, so you'll automatically be considered for EOF for financial aid, but it has to match up with your interest in the program, with the application, and all of that. So kind of work together. So the best point of contact, the best person to start with is Michelle. Um, I was accepted but didn't receive an email about an aid package. So if you submitted your FAFSA more than I would say 2 weeks ago, reach out to our office and we'll look into exactly, if we've received your FAFSA and why. Please, a common thing though is if you are coming in for spring and you did the 26-27 FAFSA, that is not the correct FAFSA for spring aid. You need to do the 25-26 FAFSA. And if you did the 25-26 FAFSA previously, you need to add Stockton to it and then resubmit it. That's also another common thing with transfer students that we see is you did the FAFSA prior before you knew you were going to come to Stockton, and then you didn't add Stockton to it now. And we won't receive it until you do that. I already completed the FAFSA and I have the info back, but I keep getting emails that it was not completed. I don't know why. Also, I made sure this college was in the FAFSA. This was 1 month ago trying to fix. Um, so my follow-up question to you would be, did you complete the correct FAFSA? Although if you received an aid offer from us, it may be that you have additional requirements that you have to complete, which are viewable in the Go Stockton portal. But if you're still having trouble, if you're not sure where to go, please feel free to email me, email our office, and we can look further into your account and see what exactly is going on. Are students receiving email in their personal email or their Stockton email? We don't have a Stockton email yet. Once you are accepted to Stockton, you'll have that Stockton email. We do not offer financial aid to students until they're accepted to the university. That will go to their Stockton email and then the email that they used on the FAFSA. Okay. It's important to note that the emails that we send do not go to parents. Only generic emails will go to parents. So things like sign up for this, webinar, the FAFSA is available and things like that. Just because of FERPA regulations and all of that, we don't email parents. In my acceptance letter, it states a deposit of $250. When is that due? There's no specific deadline for that. Stockton has a rolling admission, so you can pay that deposit up through um, the first week of classes, through the add drop period, where students can come in and enroll in classes and things like that. So that would be the third week of January, I guess. January 20th is the start of classes. So up through then, you could submit that. I wouldn't recommend waiting that long if you have your mind made up. Um, just because, you want to make sure you have your pick of classes and all of that. But you technically don't have a deadline. If I start a GI Bill, do the scholarships stay until the next year or does it change? So if you're eligible for veterans benefits, um, those are usually coupled with scholarships. Um, Kind of depends on your situation though. I would recommend on that page that I sent, stockton.edu/contact FinAid, you can schedule a phone appointment for Veterans Education Benefit Counseling. And then we can actually look into what, benefits you're eligible for. You'll need to provide us with your certificate of eligibility. We can look into what benefits you're eligible for, what percentage, if it's 100% or, 80% or whatever, whatever it is. And then we can kind of go over from there, like your unique situation. Was FAFSA processed through the shutdown? Yes, it was. So, federal student aid was still performing what they defined as, I guess, necessary tasks. So everything with processing loans, processing applications, all of that was still happening when the government was shut down. So please know that. What should I do after I submit the $250 deposit? You want to contact admissions to set up your orientation date. We do have an orientation this Friday, the 21st of November, but there are also orientations in January as well. So you want to set up one of those so that you can register for classes for the spring. If the deposit, I'm sorry, and I'm assuming that it's spring, but if the deposit's for fall, you will get an email at some point with your next steps to apply for your orientation date, and that will be in the summer. And then if the question before was the $250 deposit deadline, if that was for fall, you have until the end of add drop in the fall, which is in September. So again, no specific deadline, but you want to make sure you're submitting. If you're confident you want to come to Stockton, be a part of the Stockton family, then you can submit. I would submit as soon as you know that. If one parent student lives in New York, but the student's father lives in New Jersey and the student has resided in both, can we be considered New Jersey residents for in-state tuition costs? Um, it really depends on who the student's custodial parent is. So who the student resides with, is really the person who we're going to go off of there. Um, so if the student resides with the parent who lives in New Jersey, then they would be considered for in-state tuition. Otherwise, then they would likely be out of state. I would direct all questions regarding residency, though, to our Office of Student Records. They're a great resource. They're going to be able to really tell you, the intricacies of how they handle that, because they're the ones that end up determining in-state or out-of-state tuition. It was 25, 26, no additional requirements as of yesterday. Um, I would say still email me. Email me your Z number, Isabella, and then I will look just to make sure you don't have any requirements or anything. Somebody says my ex-husband filled out the FAFSA first and didn't have our child do it first. On top of that, he is not the custodial parent I am. Is this something that can be fixed? What do you suggest I should do? That's a hard one. That's something I want to think about. It's very difficult to change the parent of record on the FAFSA. We have to be able to show that the parent that's on there is not the custodial parent. So I would like you to send me an email with the student's information. And then even if it's the 26, 27 FAFSA, I can look in the federal system. And I can kind of brainstorm how I'd want to proceed with that. And we would ask you for documents and things. I mean, you can change it, but the school is gonna question it. And we're required to collect documents. So technically the government allows you to change it, but then it's up to the school to actually verify that information. Because if we process aid based on that and we didn't double check it and gather the documents we needed, we can actually get in trouble. So please send me the students' information. My son has been accepted. How can he find his new email? It should be in the acceptance letter that he received. It should list his Go Stockton credentials. If it doesn't list the email, he can access the email. It's a Gmail account. He can access it through his Go Stockton portal. So if he logs in there on the right-hand side at the top, he'll see like a mail icon, and then he'll be able to access his email through there. And then he'll be able to see what the email address is. The password is the same as the Go Stockton portal. And he'll be able to access it there. And then he can add it to like his phone and everything. Um, there's instructions on how to do that on our IT site. Would placement testing interfere with aid? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. If meaning like if you're able to maybe meet with financial aid or something. Um, can you elaborate a little? I'm so sorry. Just give you a second to do that. Um, If anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I think we're about at the end. Or if anybody would like to unmute. I do just want to say though, if you are going to unmute, if it's a very like personal situation, just be careful, just be mindful that we are all in a group of people. We don't all know. So I wouldn't share too much in this setting. If you would like, please email me or we can set up a phone appointment and I'd be glad to go over anything like super personal. But if you have generic questions, I put my email in here again. Um, all right, I will give just another minute, just in case anybody has some last minute questions. Otherwise, I will let you all enjoy the rest of your night. You're very welcome. Thank you all so much for sticking around, for listening. I hope I was able to help you guys learn a little bit tonight. Um, I hope you're leaving with a little more information than you came with. And like I said, we our main goal is to help you. We want to help you. We want to help your students. Oh, thank you so much. I've had this cough for like weeks now, so I'm really hoping it goes away soon. Um, but again, yeah, we are here to help. That's our main goal. And although we have a lot of regulations that we have to abide by, which is kind of not the unfortunate part, but it may make it seem like we're not always as helpful, when in fact we are trying to be. But if we don't abide by a certain regulation or something like that, the school could get in trouble and that could jeopardize aid for the thousands of students that we have. So, I just want everybody to know that our main goal is really to help our students, to make sure that they're successful, to get them all the aid that they're eligible for, and all of that. Will I have more information in the future? I will host more sessions in the future. Um, I don't know that I'll necessarily have more information. I'll have different information at Experience Stockton Day for accepted students. Kind of diving into the intricacies of like paying the bill and how to go about stuff like that. And then how to maintain financial aid, like all of that stuff. Orientation presentations are different. But as far as financing your education, not necessarily. All right, well, I think we're pretty good. If anybody, has any other questions or anything, please feel free to email me, email the financial aid office, and we would be glad to help. All right, well, everybody, again, thank you and enjoy the rest of your night and happy holidays.